Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the November version of the MSMF Wealth Management Podcast. As always, I'm joined by my colleagues, Cody Redding, Jay Peters. Boys, how are we?
Great.
Doing good.
Great.
We're getting close to year end.
Yeah.
Tying a bow on it, right, Jay?
Let's tie a bow on it.
I mean, there is a lot going on, but most importantly, you might be a daddy again tonight.
Yeah. It looks like it might be heading that way.
Okay. By the time you all hear this,
I will definitely have a baby by then, yeah.
well, you're not going to have a baby, but you'll be a dad again.
I'll be a dad again.
For the
third time.
Yeah. Then it'll be your turn to go down that pike again.
My wife said no.
Wow. So between the two, you have 5 chillins. Way to go, boys.
Yeah.
Keep growing that. Keep growing those little taxpayers. So beyond that, which is probably the most important thing, there are some less important things going on. It is November. We just finished a general election, which I'll let Cody speak to in a minute. A lot going on with the economy and the market. Some good, some not so good, but mostly good. Year end, we're going to be talking about open enrollment, and then as well, kind of year end planning and strategy stuff. So why don't we dive right into it?
All right.
Cody, Dad, it's all you. Talk to me about this recent general election and kind of how that trickles over to the economy and the market.
Yeah, so we had general election. And again, no matter what side you're on, surprise, the market didn't have a negative reaction to it, which historically it usually doesn't. And in fact, we've seen a little bump up from that. But I think volatility will usually over about the 2 weeks after the election or so sort of mitigates out. And just historically from fourth quarter anyways is usually the best quarter of the year. Mm-hmm. And especially in election years, from the election to the end of the year, usually the markets do quite well. So we're seeing something that is, I would say, ordinary. Nothing is extraordinary.
Sure.
And I think we can all agree on that. Glad the election is over.
Oh my God.
Yes.
This got so overbearing.
I've never gotten so many spam calls, spam texts.
The text messages now are just obnoxious.
Nonstop. So, yeah, my phone is, I feel I got like a little anxiety over it because I'm not getting messages.
Suddenly you're not as popular anymore.
So that part is done away with, over with. The economy and the market. So, yes, they are two separate things. Usually they kind of go hand in hand. I think, the economy has slowed down. Look at GDP growth and all that. And that was expected because that's why we raised rates, was to kind of put a little halt on some things. So I think that's gone as kind of best as it could from
Sure.
what we're seeing right now.
Where we've come from.
Yeah. Unemployment is still at 4.1%. The Feds, when they started cutting the rates here in September, it was anticipated it would be like between 4.5 and 5. So it's lower than they thought. So that just goes to show you how strong the economy was to begin with. Again, we've never raised rates so quickly in a short period of time. And we're still having record earnings for corporations, right?
Yeah,
So people
amazing.
are still spending money. There's not a lot of overall negative sentiment out there. Certainly, I think we're in an area right now where we're going to take data month by month and just make sure that it's kind of coming through with what we think. So we're nearing the tail end of third quarter earnings coming in here. And for the most part, kind of came in with expectations, maybe even a little bit above. Again, that's why the market is pricing that in right now. And they're giving, future earning estimates that are showing growth. So you pack all that together and everything looks pretty good right now, right? Certainly some areas that we look at as consumer debt's rising, but nothing that's crazy right now. While I say unemployment's still low, it probably will tick up a little bit just year in. There's some hiring freezes and things like that. But again, big picture, things are looking pretty good out there. Open enrollment period. So a lot of corporations are in open enrollment period or might be finishing those up right now. Medicare, that's the big one out there. I think the first open enrollment period just ended, but then I think it some states have a second one. I think Missouri is one that starts December 5th or so and goes into January. So, supplemental advantage plans, now's the time that you want to start comparing those and seeing what works the best for you. Because if you get on new medications and things like that, you're not stuck with it. You can actually go to a different plan that might offer you better things. And the big part, and we always tell our clients too, is especially through your corporation, if you have access to long-term care insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, usually under group coverage, it's a lot less expensive.
Right.
You usually don't have to go through underwriting with it. So take advantage of those. And if you're unsure, let us as the advisors take a look at it, and we can give you at least a good judgment opinion with it. And then some year-end strategy. So we are, a month and a half out. Can't believe it already. So things we got to get done by year end. Well, we got to get RMDs out, obviously. What you want to do with those. Are there charitable intentions that, you can take your RMD and give it to a charity and not have to pay taxes on it? There's Roth conversions that have to be done by the end of the year if that's something that is advantageous to you. Gain loss harvesting. And besides and just charitable giving. So do I want to set up a charitable account? I think those are probably the big things that, year in.
You did good.
Oh, thanks.
You covered the whole page.
I was rambling it down.
Excellent. So that's let's go down from the 10,000, 7,500 foot view, maybe down to 5,000 ground zero. Some clients, Jay, are still in this open enrollment period. Maybe talk about some of those specific elections, some of the landmines to avoid, maybe with the healthcare spending accounts. What are you telling your clients right now, specifically as it relates to open enrollment?
Yeah, the biggest decision is a lot of times around their health insurance, right? And so Cody mentioned a lot of the ancillary benefits, which are definitely important, but usually the biggest change is, do I want to make a change to my health insurance? So if you have a high deductible plan, if that makes sense for you, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Or are you going to do, the general coverage that a lot of people do? Super important, but now's the time to really kind of wrap it up for most people and figure out, make a decision for next year, right? And one of the biggest things could be maybe if you're adding a dependent this year, maybe you need to change your plan, right? So that's, so talking with young families, a lot of times it's, you did this in the past, but maybe this makes more sense for next year or even now if, that's a qualifying event to make a change, right? So that's really the big one for health insurance and open enrollment period for personal things, right? And then along with that, piggybacks into that would be if you have access to a flexible spending account, FSA, or a healthcare savings account, an HSA. Each of those have a couple different flavors for them, but again, now's the time to be kind of projecting for next year and thinking about, does it make sense for us to fund that? Especially like the childcare one, that's one that a lot of people pass up and just forget about. So if you're already paying a lot for childcare and you can maybe do some tax-free childcare dollars, let's do it, right?
Absolutely.
And then if you're thinking about year-end stuff, definitely think about, hey, if I have access to an HSA, we should probably fund that, right? We've talked in the past a lot, so I don't want to go into too much detail, but if you have an HSA and you haven't already funded it, 12/31 is the deadline. Let's figure out how to get some money in there.
Right.
All right, and then the last thing would be thinking about your benefits and things that you're doing would be your retirement plans that you have. So if you have like a 401k, are you signed up for that to automatically go up in January? Or maybe timing it with if you have a raise or something coming up, the 1% rule we talked about, right? So that is definitely something that's important. And you can be kind of looking at how much money did I make this year? Does it make sense for me to do the same thing next year? Maybe I should increase something, including, don't forget, a lot of plans have Roth versus traditional. So maybe it makes sense for me today to do more Roth next year. So I add 1% to Roth or something like that. So,
and I think there's some plan changes coming into effect. Is that 1/1 of 25 about if you're over your catch-up contributions and what you can put? I think some parts of it, if you make over a certain amount, you have to put your catch-up towards the Roth, I believe.
Correct. Right.
But your plan has to allow a Roth.
Correct.
Okay, so Yes, I think there's just going to be a lot of changes that will happen here, certainly at the end of this year, going into next year, that people probably need to be aware of, especially if you're maxing out your 401k.
Yeah.
Right, and certainly if clients have not elected certain options on their benefits, now's the time to ask the question.
Yes.
Right. I know we come across clients that have access to an HSA and they're not using it, and I'll let you kind of walk through the difference between that and an FSA. Some plans have both. HSA being the unicorn that it is, you can kind of walk through that, and then. To Cody's point, some plans allow Roth, but our clients have not utilized those. So maybe if you expand upon those two a little bit as it relates to kind of closing out this open enrollment period.
Okay. So FSA, that's going to be a use it or lose it type of an account. That's why it's a spending account. This is their S. Right?
By end of year use.
By yes and no. They have a little asterisk
Little
that
flexible period,
some of it you can
30
go
days,
past
so.
January. Yeah. And certain reasons and certain amounts, and I'm not going to go into that detail. But just know that the goal is to spend it all down before the year end. And if you have an Amazon account, they have an Amazon section. It's like HSA eligible, right?
Right.
Or, I'm sorry, FSA. FSA eligible right here, right? So keep that in mind if you're like, I got like $50 left. What do I do with it? And then, so with an HSA, though, it's a savings account. So it rolls over. You don't have to spend it. I think we talked last time about like the shoebox method of you can take your receipt and just keep it in a shoebox and save it for a rainy day. If
Right.
I'm going to make this withdrawal later, right? Because you don't have to take out the money from an HSA when you make the expense.
Right.
So you can save it up and kind of pull it out later. There's lots of different strategies around that. But the important part is before the year end, getting money into that.
Right.
So yeah, HSA, savings, long-term FSA, you want to spend it down to zero by the end of the year. Was there a second part to that?
Yeah, the Roth versus the traditional if they have not used that inside their 401k.
Yeah, and then one of the fun parts that Cody's talking about is they keep adding different flexibility things. Well, that's great, except the 401k companies aren't ready for it. The plan has to be amended for them to payroll has to be amended to show it. Like there's all these different moving parts. So don't be surprised if you're getting a whole bunch of new stuff and like, we have this new thing. A week later, we have this new thing.
Yeah.
It just keeps updating. That's totally normal. And it's because they keep changing the rules with super catch-ups, and part of it has to be Roth and all kinds of different flexible things. Soon you'll be able to choose your match, hopefully, if you want that to be traditional too.
Right.
I'm sorry, Roth, if you want that to be Roth too. So lots of different moving things because of Secure Act 2.0. But honestly, I think it's all for the better in the long run. It's just
Excellent.
confusing now.
And you mentioned something. You mentioned since it's open enrollment, consider increasing contributions to 401k. So let me go back to Cody and what you were talking about. With the election, the economy, I know the Fed will likely continue to lower interest rates. Anything you're recommending to clients that they need to do in anticipation of this with their overall portfolio or their 401k?
Yeah, certainly the great thing about the 401k is that you get the dollar cost average really into it. So, we are at an all-time high with the market. There will be a pullback at some point. Not saying it's going to be in the immediate future, but, you just got to be realistic about it. And the beginning of the year is always a good time to take advantage of those changes because it's, fresh year, fresh start type thing.
Right.
Like what Jay said, increasing your contribution into it. Also weighing, taxes, right? So we're still in the tax era from his first term in there, and now that he's back in, likelihood of him extending those cuts are pretty high. Now, will there be some changes with it? I'm sure there will be. There always will be. So, if you're used to putting money in that traditional, maybe look at it again and say, okay, is it worth maybe putting a portion of it in the Roth? Because the amount of taxes that you're saving now by putting into traditional will probably be higher in the future.
Right.
Just because I think rates are going to go up. So tax rates are going to go up anyways. They have to at some point.
They more than likely do.
So yeah, and and kind of to Jay's point too is I think there's so many changes happening at the beginning of 1/1 of 25 just from 401k stuff. I don't even have all of them memorized. It's a little overwhelming. So
Whoa.
I know. I know.
You lack of sleep in
Yeah.
anticipation of a baby.
Yeah. So, but the infrastructure is not even there to do it.
Right.
So, I won't be surprised if those get pushed back a little bit like they have been in the past. So, making sure, because there are changes, there are new things, that you're looking at that, or at least asking us about it.
Right. Perfect. All right. Jane, let me go back to you. Cody talked about some other, beyond open enrollment, some other year-end strategies. I know there's quite a few you talk to your clients about. Give me kind of your biggest hitter, your top couple, 2 or 3 ones that you talk to clients about.
Yeah, the biggest one, and actually Cody and I had a conversation with a client this morning, would be Roth conversions.
Right.
Same conversation Cody was just talking about, does it make sense to maybe prepay some of the tax now? And if it's not by a contribution, sometimes it makes sense to convert some of your traditional Roth today, volunteer to pay the tax at a known tax rate, especially if you have a longer time period. Or in the case of like our client this morning, if you've got room where you can pay 0% tax and do that conversion, that's kind of a slam dunk.
Great place to be in.
Yeah,
Right.
So that was a pretty cool situation to kind of bring that to our client. But sometimes it makes sense to also dig into the 10%, 12% brackets, and sometimes even a 22% bracket, and volunteer again a known tax amount today, so that you're kind of pushing that out in the future of a nice tax-free bucket. So Roth conversions, that's kind of the number one that we're having conversations around right now. And then another one that I wanted to mention, a couple stats here. Did you know that last Christmas, 34% of Americans used their credit card to add Christmas gifts? So to go for Christmas, 34%. They went into debt. A third of Americans. That's pretty big. And if they all just paid it off the next month, that's probably okay. However, at last check, 28% of Americans are still paying for Christmas last year.
Oh, my.
As of 2 days ago.
It's a sobering statistic, Jay.
Ouch. So maybe I might throw out a challenge to figure out, let's not be part of that 28% of Americans, us and our clients. Let's not be a part of the, So if we're going to, have a nice Christmas and holidays, that's great, but let's not go into debt for it.
Amen.
Challenge.
Amen. Good year-end advice, my man. Cody, any other year-end advice for clients?
If you have some charitable intentions, that is a 12/31 deadline.
Yep.
Now is the time to do that. I think the annual exclusion for this year is 18, and it's going up to 19,000 per person for next year. And that's something that's also set to sunset at the end of 2025. What they're going to do with the overall gifting limit. So have that on your radar too, as something that could change here in the near future.
Super. Guys, great job. There's a lot going on. We got 5-6 weeks left in the calendar year before we ring in a new year. It's hard for me to believe that. You're going to have an extra tax deduction, which is nice.
Yay, me.
And as we talked about, we just finished a general election. A lot going on with the economy, a lot going on with the market. We're finishing up open enrollment, and then we got all the miscellaneous year-end strategies. So if you have any questions on any of that and how that impacts your overall financial blueprint, please pick up the phone, call any one of the 3 of us, shoot us an email, shoot us a text on the text line. Please feel free to share this podcast with your friends and family if they have questions relative to kind of what's going on here between now and year end. If they have concerns, they're worried, or they're joyous over the way the general election turned out and what that means to them, please feel free to talk to us. We've talked to everybody on both ends of the spectrum. There's a positive outlook relative to the impact of the economy in your market. There are some questions relative to legislation when we get into that, probably to middle of next year, and we'll talk through all that and the impact. But don't hesitate to reach out. Have a fantastic Thanksgiving and a wonderful Christmas holiday. We're here for you. You want to call Cody and congratulate him, feel free. Thanks for watching.